situation of Amazon, it can really happen two ways. Some of the products on Amazon actually sells another product or sell through its seller network with third parties. And so part of that, the answer to that question would depend, right? So if Amazon is selling something directly, then it would depend on where Amazon has nexus, so its warehouses, its operations. It would dictate the state that it has presence in. On the individual seller side, let's just take fulfilled by Amazon, would come down to the nexus of the sellers as well. So if you're buying something from a seller who's located in Texas, then you're going to pay Texas sales tax. And if they're not located in Utah, then you probably wouldn't. So there's a number of different ways it can happen. But the challenging thing with Amazon as well is that the warehouses can create nexus as well for the sellers. And this is something that is somewhat debated in the industry, but definitely leans more towards the sellers having a similar nexus, because essentially they are storing products in Amazon's warehouse. So they're looked at as basically warehousing their products in different states. So now you take a seller that was originally just in Texas, now they have 14 other states, depending on the amount of warehouses that Amazon has at any given time in different states, have potential nexus. So now this seller in Texas could potentially have to do 14 different state sales tax returns, really just depending on their volume. So that's where it gets tricky. Kind of the third point to that is there's also a use tax. And so I can tell you how it works in California, for example. So if I go out and I buy something on Amazon, let's say I buy a $2,000 computer, and I buy it from somebody on Amazon who, let's just say they don't have nexus in California, so I don't pay any California sales tax. Well, California still wants a use tax, which is essentially like a sales tax, remitted to them for the privilege of using that equipment in California. Let's say, again, I buy a $2,000 computer. I don't pay any sales tax initially. Well, then California wants me to fill out a use tax return reporting that $2,000 purchase and paying the 8% on that, so roughly $16 would be remitted to California as my use tax. So if you don't pay the sales tax one way, you pay it another, and that's a tricky area. And there's a lot of people that aren't in compliance with that, and some smaller businesses kind of disregard that, and probably less of a potential issue for them. The numbers are relatively small. Your company gets bigger and the transactions are bigger, that liability rises. So let's say you buy $1 million in computer equipment all of a sudden, right? That same fact pattern, 8%, that's $80,000. That's pretty significant. And in a lot of cases, what the states do, what California certainly does, is they have various partnerships with different online sellers like Egghead, and they get information from different sources. So sometimes a client will get a letter from the state board saying, hey, we believe you might owe use tax, and maybe they never even had heard of use tax, right? And that's the first they find out about it. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what do I do? And essentially they have to pay the sales tax now to California in that situation. So definitely an important area to be aware of and handle it correctly. That depends on the complexity level. If there's a handful of states, we might help them directly. Certainly, if they had all 50 states, we wouldn't try to handle that all ourselves. There's other third-party companies we bring in that we have partnerships with that can help manage that. There's different software packages and technology platforms that are built. So something like sales tax, let's say you do have sales tax in a bunch of states, maybe 20 or 30. It's pretty unrealistic to think that one person could manually track all that, because sales tax laws typically change frequently. Items are taxed differently in different states, and it becomes pretty complicated fairly quickly. The good news is there is software out there that can help manage that process and automate that process. So for clients that get more sophisticated like that, it typically makes sense to do that. And certainly the companies that are dealing with that now, a lot of them are typically larger companies too, so that helps a little bit in the fact that they usually have a little bit more resources to help manage that.